The one phrase that I would say, Professor Powell's keynote was incredibly powerful and compelling. The one phrase that really resonated with me was when he said that the war on terror was right. It was a war on Muslims, but it was a war on the Constitution. And that's the key framing that so many of us within our community and our allies outside of the Muslim community have been trying to advocate, right, since 9/11, saying that, the government may come for our community today, but they may come for your community tomorrow, right, or next month or next year. And that's what we experienced during the Trump administration, when all of our communities were constantly under attack, whether it was the Muslim community, refugees, asylum seekers, immigrants, right, women, the LGBTQ community, and our brothers and sisters and other marginalized and communities of color. And I would completely agree with Mehwish that one of the key points and opportunities for us, especially during the last administration, was having that ability to do the work, to do the coalition building. So just about every issue that I work on, I would probably say that my co-panelists are probably very similar, is that anytime we're advocating on whether it's increasing refugee resettlement, right, pushing back on the Muslim ban, repealing the 2001, 2002, these war authorizations, the key to building more momentum and support and people power is the coalitions that we've built, making sure that we try to show that these issues, it's not just insular, it's not just specific to our community, but it's intersectional, that we all need to stand up together in solidarity and fighting for one another and ensuring that we push back on discriminatory policies that impact our communities.
So looking at the history of unequal citizenship in the U.S., what tools and strategies would each of you suggest need to be employed, specific strategies that need to be employed to challenge the status quo? And who are the allies in this struggle? Who can you reach out to build those coalitions?
Sure. I'm, just a huge believer in using every tool in the toolbox. So often as a lawyer, people expect that all I am focused on or all I would prioritize is litigation, but individual representation, counseling, advocacy, working with the media, empowering community members and impacted peoples before issues happened, community organizing, and even frankly, civil disobedience are all key. And that's just to list a few. That's my old list before Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok were a thing, right? So digital advocacy is also key. We have to use every tool in the toolbox. We know that those who would seek to oppress us, those who would seek to incarcerate us and otherwise target us are using every tool at their disposal. And so we cannot limit ourselves, and we will be most successful when these tools are employed cohesively. So we have to be talking to each other as we're engaging different strategies. I often think of our work on the Muslim ban, where there were people at the airports organizing protests. There were people in newsrooms ensuring that these stories were being told, and there were litigators filing briefs, and the list goes on of the people just doing different things. So every tool in the toolbox. Now, who do we work with? Other targeted communities, right? People who have been in this fight much longer than us, people who we can learn from, and people who we should be advocating for. A very difficult lesson, I think, in South Asian and Arab immigrant communities in the last 20 to 30 years has been just the reality that many of us sat on the sidelines as Black and Latinx communities were targeted for so long. And then we saw, of course, that those strategies were then used against us. And so we need to work with communities who have weathered this storm before, and in many cases are frankly still going through it.
I think one thing Zahra mentioned was this idea of, using litigation is of course extremely important, but also empowering the voices within our own communities that have been sidelined, that have been silenced, and to really use the strength of our own voices. I think that one thing that is very unfortunately neglected a lot of times is really championing first person narratives and letting people see who we are power and to speak for ourselves and to really center the voices of those who are the most marginalized within our communities. So I think that, you know, we've really discovered more recently the power of storytelling and the power of connecting with people. And I think that is something that was sort of underutilized, you know, in the last couple of decades, that's kind of emerging more as a powerful force. I'm a litigator, so I obviously think that litigation is extremely important and it must continue with gusto. And we really need to use every resource available. And one thing I think that's really important is to really, you know, sit down and continue to collaborate with public policy experts and with legal experts and come up with strategies to really go after and do impact litigation in an intelligent way, in a strategic way. And I think that still has to kind of be central to our strategy.
What I wanted to also emphasize, and Mehwish mentioned this, is the power of storytelling, right? So, you know, key moments, and as Zahra was talking about some of the advocacy and organizing that our community did alongside our allies in pushing back against the Muslim and refugee ban, one of the key moments during that fight was, and the importance of it was the way we were able to tell these stories, right? So we had key partners that were also helping to lead these fights, including the ACLU, including the Leadership Conference, right? These are massive organizations with millions of members and membership organizations who helped amplify the stories of specific families that had been impacted, Muslim families living in our country impacted by the ban. And I thought that was incredibly powerful, right? Not just being able to tell these stories, so to, you know, try to explain to our neighbors and coworkers, right, our friends and associates, that these are actually policies that are impacting folks in your communities and concrete steps that you can take to help. I think that was incredibly powerful tool to be able to then you know, show our elected officials at the federal, state, and local level how they can effectively push back against these policies and how they can be there for our communities and how they can be true allies.
Well, I wanted to move to, because we're an all-star female panel here, I want to talk about the impact on Muslim women in particular, which has been profound. And if you could each in your own way characterize a powerful point about that, but also why is it so important for Muslim women to be uplifted and to be engaged personally in this effort and in this fight?
Muslim women, in many cases, though not all, wear our religion, I would say, on our sleeves, but we're also wearing it on our heads. We are the most visible targets in our communities at times. And so that's first, right? First and foremost is that we are on the front lines, whether or not we want to be. Among the many possible responses that come up is that the way in which we are profiled and pitted against Muslim men is really challenging, right? So we are oppressed and we need to be protected from Muslim men. We are the reason that we invade Afghanistan. We are the reason that Muslim men are policed and incarcerated. And at the same time, we are complicit, right? So we are submissive, we are oppressed, and we are complicit for standing by and allegedly letting our men do these things. And so not only are we targeted disproportionately when it comes to hate crimes and bullying, harassment, employment law because of our visible or our different visible appearance, but we are also, you know, the cause for violence against Muslim men and then complicit in the violence of Muslim men. And so it's just a very convoluted web that is woven by government narratives, by media narratives, and frankly, sometimes, right, even by people in our own communities. And so attempting to do this work and to speak out when one is the only woman in a space advocating for men is itself a challenge.